we ourselves can't be activists, and they can be. Like, the thing is, you know, there's you kind of get to a point where, depending on where you live and what you're doing in your life, you just cannot like put that amount of time and energy into any form of activism, and especially not like YouTube videos. So, you know, you sort of want to put that into someone else, and you find that whoever that person is, or people. So, you know, and those two are those people.
It's basically like you're one of the people who goes to church on a Sunday and sits down and thinks to yourself, oh, I don't have to proselytize my religion because there's this preacher who stands at the front of the room and he does that for me. It's kind of like that.
I didn't think about it. I would never describe it that way, but actually it's kind of apt.
Yeah, it's not too bad of an interpretation, I was going to say.
Yeah, that's actually not bad, yeah.
Characteristics associated with cultic groups revised by some people whose names I'm not going to even try to pronounce. The group displays excessive, zealous and unquestioning commitment to its leader, and, whether he is alive or dead, regards his belief system, ideology and practices as truth, as law.
Yeah, sorry, before we keep going though, do we all three of us watch their content more or less equally?
Johnny does not watch any of their contents, but we're going to get to his discussion soon enough. This stream is actually going to go through stages. First, we're going to talk about the scruff between Isaac. Then we're going to be talking about Hysteria's issue with Isaac.
Yeah.
It's interesting listening to what you're talking about, though, because I mean, from what I can gather, it's two fairly popular vegan YouTubers that, more or less, from what you're saying, kind of proves the point that I'm making, really, in the sense that they're always trying to outdo each other. There can only be one true vegan, you know? At the end of the day, it's like, it's a competition. Nobody's vegan enough for anybody else, and it's interesting to me. Do you know what I mean?
Actually, the funny thing is they're actually not that popular, and that's actually what even makes it scarier. It's the fact that their following is small but dedicated, and the thing is that a lot of vegan channels on YouTube are really interested in doing, like, very vegan 101. Like, everything on their channel is about how to be vegan.
Right.
And the thing is that their content in particular is quite a bit above that. It's not even in the first semester. It's like way in third year. You know what I mean? Like, it's much past sort of the standard that runs through.
In part 1, I'd like to look first at some popular spokespeople for veganism. Much like Christianity and many other religions, veganism has spread far and wide, and thus is practiced in a variety of different ways, as it has adapted itself to fit in with different cultures. These subgroups are capable of operating independently and might not necessarily cooperate at all with other groups. All these subgroups call themselves vegan, and operate with a no true Scotsman perspective towards any subgroups who do not share their particular ideology. This has the tactical advantage of meaning that it is impossible for an outsider to pinpoint any one vegan's actual position, and therefore impossible to refute them until that individual explains them, while simultaneously allowing the vegan to believe that everyone else who calls themselves vegan adheres to their specific brand of veganism, so long as neither one of them questions it. Also, very similar to Christians, vegans believe that we are all sinners, but that's okay because the path to redemption is in their hands and they are only too happy to show you the way. And this is the part where they will point you towards their own leader. Usually this will come in the form of a documentary or a YouTube personality, and their hope is that the narrator will convert you, just like a Christian taking you to their particular church. Thus, there are almost as many vegan leaders as there are vegans, and it would be impossible to find and list out the different ideologies of them all, and many would undoubtedly contradict each other. In this video, I will introduce some of the more outspoken and popular figures in the modern vegan movement that I have personally been recommended, and briefly summarise their ideologies.
Ideology can be a tricky concept to get your head around because it's hard to find a really good definition. It changes from book to book, and that's because it encompasses so many different ideas. One way to think about it is to think of ideology as a shared system of values, beliefs, and attitudes. The key part of this is to know that it's about being shared. Ideologies don't belong to individuals. They belong to social groups, and particularly larger social groups. Ideologies help us to make sense of reality. They're a system of values and beliefs and attitudes that help us make sense of the world around us and how it should be and how it should work. So if we take our own sort of system of ideology, a Western ideology, when we talk Western ideology, we're talking about the values and beliefs of countries that evolve out of Western European thinking. So we're thinking of, obviously, your France and England and Italy, but also America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and even countries like Singapore would have a lot of adherence to Western ideologies. And so the features of that we're looking at are individualism, private ownership, property ownership, freedom of speech, equality, free enterprise, democracy. And so one way to think about this is in contrast to, say, the ideologies of communism in China. In China, the importance of the collective, that the success of the whole country outweighs the success of the individual. In Western ideology, the idea is that if everyone is individually being successful and everyone's in competition with each other to be individually successful, everyone benefits. That's the theory, at least.
Cult organizations such as the Unification Church change reality to suit the situation. And cult behavior results from the power a situation has over an individual's thoughts and actions. No one knows this better than former Moon cult member Stephen Hassan. Hassan is now a nationally recognized cult counselor, an expert on the altered realities destructive cults create to imprison their members.
The average public person looks at cult members and says, there's something wrong with them. They're stupid, they come from a bad family, they're weak, they're looking for something. And it's my experience that most of the people are very intelligent, educated, idealistic, ambitious, and they're just caught at a vulnerable moment in their life.
I'm vegan. I don't eat meat or chicken or pork or fish or eggs or dairy. I wasn't born like this. In fact, being vegan or even vegetarian wasn't really a viable option for me in the 70s and 80s. If I had told my mom that I felt weird about eating animals, she would have been like, what? People didn't survive the Holocaust so you could complain about what I put in front of you. True story. Most of us grow up with no idea how food gets to our plate. But this not knowing is actually a pretty new phenomenon in the course of human history. Up until fairly recently, pretty much everybody knew that the lamb chop on your plate came from that guy who owns all the lambs. And the cheese and milk that we eat is from the lady with all the cows and goats. And that guy named Gonzo with all of his chicken friends, he's responsible for the abundance of eggs. Everyone knew that eating meat meant that an animal had been slaughtered for their meal, period. Cut to the 21st century, and we don't think about this stuff because we don't have to. Meat and eggs and dairy are processed somewhere, and they end up on our plate, and they taste good. And most people don't feel the need to say anything more about that than, it's yummy and I like it.
Step 1. Simplify the opposing viewpoint down to a simple straw man that can be easily refuted. In this case, for example, the only reason anyone might eat meat is because it tastes good. No other reasons are even considered. Also, she was able to collectivize all meat eaters into an ignorant model. Now her vegan audience see all non-vegans as uneducated people who just eat meat and dairy products without ever considering where it has come from.
So there are a few things you have to do to make the most chicken breasts for the lowest price so that as much as possible of the profit goes to you. Number 1, grow more chickens faster. How do you make chickens grow faster? Genetic selection. Take the fastest growing chickens in your coop, breed them with a rooster, repeat selection, and breed again. Over several generations, you will have created a very special genetic line of chickens. Yes, that's how it works. It's science. Number 2, spend less on the chickens. So for example, chickens need to be slaughtered, and the goal is to find the fastest way to do it. And something you may not know about chickens is they don't like to be kept close together. So if you're cutting costs, you can't let them live in spacious living quarters, right? They need to be packed together tightly in cages. But because they're a persnickety social species, If you pack them that tight together, they start fighting and pecking each other with their beaks. So how do you deal with this unpleasantness? You cut off their beaks. Problem solved.
Step 2. Project the worst traits of the outgroup onto the whole of the outgroup, solidifying the us versus them mentality into the in-group. In this case, notice how she made it sound as though this practice was commonplace for all chicken farms, when in reality it is a rarity. Vegans in the in-group now believe that non-vegans are uneducated, but any that contradict this and suggest that they know where their meat comes from and yet are still content to eat it sound as if they are happy for chickens to have their beaks cut off and are therefore quickly classed as evil.
Okay, how else can we cut costs? Number 3, spend as little money as possible on the factory itself. The factory can't cost too much, either in its construction or its upkeep. This might mean building the smallest space possible to save on construction costs, or it might mean not maintaining the facility's inspections and cleanliness because that stuff can cost a lot of money. And if you hire workers who typically don't have legal defense or union support, you get cheaper labor and you can even work them longer hours because you don't have to pay overtime. These 3 examples of ways to cut costs in order to make the most profit show that if we think only of economics as what drives us in food production, we produce economically efficient food, but the question is, at what cost?
Step 3. A simple false dichotomy. Either there is no meat production, or else the only meat will come from factory farms.
And this is not about placing human rights onto the lives of animals, because that's what crazy vegans do.
So this is Mayim Bialik, who shared with us her main reason for going vegan is due to the economic greed of factory farmers. In her perspective, the only way to combat this is to entirely stop funding any kind of meat or dairy production. Now let's allow her to explain a little more about her ideology.
But it doesn't have to be this way, just like it didn't used to be this way. Animals lived symbiotically with humanity for most of human history, when we cared for their needs, gave them room to roam, nutritionally appropriate food to eat, so that when it came time to take their lives, we honored that life because we know that it had been treated with respect. I understand that it's easier not to think about these things, and I can't make you. My hope is that someday we'll get closer to a healthier and more ethical balance for all. Until then, I'm vegan.
So, as we look at these points, these are things that I'm sure we almost all agree with. However, many of us disagree with Mayim's solution, and this is because her solution is firmly rooted in her perception that capitalism creates a system in which factory farms are inevitable and unavoidable. Just look at how healthy these birds are. Their beaks aren't clipped, there isn't a cage in sight. If more funding went into these kinds of farms, then there would be less caged hens. By boycotting the meat industry entirely, you force these kinds of farms out of existence. Costs must be cut, and the lack of profit means that the only viable industry will become the cheapest option. Hence, by becoming vegan, you are creating more opportunity for factory farms to exist, and aiding the end of free-range farming.
Alright, so today I'm going to be responding to what I consider the stupidest video that's been addressed to me so far. This one comes from BLH Productions, who's just some obese, delusional retard on the internet. And I'm going to admit right off the bat, the kind of stupid that this guy represents is the kind of stupid that bugs me the most. The type of person who says bacon is one thing. The type of person who truly convinces themselves of a complex rationalization for bullshit, that is another. And that just, it just annoys the shit out of me. I hate people like this.
Here we have Isaac, who runs the YouTube channel named Ask Yourself. Ask Yourself has a small, dedicated following, and the channel is mostly dedicated to showcasing one specific argument for veganism, which Isaac has titled, Name the Trait. As we can already see, Isaac's brand of veganism is far more extreme in its polarity than the sentiments expressed by Mayim. Isaac introduces the video by openly stating that anyone who argues against veganism bugs him the most, and states that he hates people like this. It becomes immediately clear that he wishes his audience to share his hatred before they are given any reasonable chance to make up their own minds.
During the course of evolution, human brain has developed shortcuts for making decisions quick, to save energy of the brain. These shortcuts are nothing but triggers. In today's world, our brain uses these triggers more than ever, as our brain is flooded by information through various sources nowadays, and we don't have enough time and energy to analyze all the information that comes to us. We hugely make decisions on the basis of these triggers and not real facts as we think we do.
Okay, so he starts by saying that morality is an opinion, which is true in a sense, but the way that he says it here is misleading. It's true in the sense that morality is a subjective construct. It doesn't exist objectively as matter. But the way that he says it here gives the impression that morality is a pick and choose. You can just choose whatever moral system you want, whatever is convenient for you. So sure, it's an opinion, but it's an opinion that should be based on logical consistency. Logical consistency would dictate that if you value your own well-being, you have no basis for denying it to another sentient being without establishing a difference between the two, which, if present in either, would justify the difference of treatment for either.
Isaac promotes a much more hardline approach to veganism than we saw from Mayim. While Mayim was happy to share her own views and encourage her audience to research more and come to their own conclusions, we can see here that Isaac considers animals to be equal to humans and demands any meat eater to be able to justify themselves morally by naming a trait that separates humans from the animals that we eat. Ideally, Isaac would like to see all animals have equal rights to humans within our society. His claim is that he is willing to change this position if anyone is able to convince him successfully that there is a clear difference between us and these animals.
My argument does not hinge on morality existing subjectively or objectively. It only hinges on logical consistency and a belief in human moral value. If you think that you have a right to life, then you are being logically inconsistent to dismiss the right to life of another sentient being without specifying a difference present in that sentient being, which, if present in either, would justify the difference of treatment for either.
And this is not about placing human rights onto the lives of animals, because that's what crazy vegans do.
So no, it being okay to kill and eat an animal for food is not the same as saying it is okay to kill and eat a human. I wouldn't say that it's the same. I would just say that both are wrong. And this is obviously because there is no trait present in animals, which if present in humans would cause us to reject our right to life.
Let's try to bullet point Isaac's ideology in the same way we did for Mayim.
You didn't mention animals who die as a byproduct of human progress, and we could talk about why that's necessary. It's necessary for some humans to die as a byproduct of human progress, okay? We accept that a certain amount of humans will die every year in car accidents. We don't consider this a genocide because we understand that those deaths are necessary for civilization to exist and to continue to develop to higher levels. And we are constantly in the process of implementing measures to minimize these deaths as much as possible. You can't justify a systematic global holocaust in the same way that you can justify deaths that are necessary for the function and progress of civilization.
So we can see that Isaac would like to see much more extreme changes made to society. His ideology is based on philosophy, as opposed to Mayim's, who was based much more on the economy. Though I agree with points 3 and 4, I am very much opposed to the first 2 points on our list. Ideally, I would not like humans to create conflict over each other's dietary choices, and I do not see it as any human's place to hold judgment over another unless a crime has been committed. I understand, however, that in Isaac's mind, crimes are being committed, and so I understand why he and others like him are so passionate. However, this does not give them the right to accost friends, family, and strangers alike, as these so-called crimes are not currently against the law. As for point 2, rights have not been taken away from these animals, they have just not been afforded to them yet. This isn't to say that they never will be, it's just not currently the case within our society.
The rise of farming and the lethal gift of livestock. The switch from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one of food production was not an immediate one. Rather, the earliest method of farming was more along the lines of ancient humans managing the land instead of planting and harvesting crops. Ancient Aboriginal Australians were noted to have managed their landscape by clearing away trees that competed with the wild yams in the area. It took several thousand years for humans to evolve to the point of relying predominantly on farming as a source of food. Many of the first gardens that appeared around 11,000 BC were simply cultivated as insurance in case of a shortage of wild game. However, as time progressed, several biological and cultural evolutions produced 4 major factors that made the switch from hunting and gathering to farming necessary for survival. The first major factor was the decline of natural prey. Large mammal populations in the Americas and Eurasia experienced rapid decline, sometimes to the point of extinction. During this time, another ecological factor, natural climate change, expanded the area that grains such as wheat and barley were able to grow. The abundance of these easily domesticated crops brought about the third factor that supported farming, the introduction of technology and tools. Around 11,000 BC, inventions such as woven baskets, storage pits, and scythes began to appear in the Fertile Crescent area. Finally, the fourth factor that virtually killed the hunter-gatherer lifestyle was the opportunity of rapid population growth that farming provided. No longer having any need to migrate in search of prey, humans were able to settle in an area while still providing enough food for their society. Hunters were then forced to either adopt these new methods of food production or die.
So the YouTube channel WatchMojo just recently made a video about veganism, and the thing about discussing veganism is it's a complex topic that covers nutrition, the environment, and ethics. And unless you're willing to delve into some scientific and philosophical complexities, you really have no business making baseless statements about veganism and claiming they're facts to an audience of over 10 million people.
Number 5. Humanity may have evolved because of its non-vegan diet.
I don't mean to insult anyone's cat, but I don't see a correlation between meat eating and intelligence. But I do see a correlation between meat and Alzheimer's disease. Human beings have made no physiological adaptations to eat meat, and the consensus among most anthropology experts is cooking our food is what supported our brain development, as it allowed us to eat a greater volume of food over a shorter period of time and extract more nutrients from our diet. Meat doesn't have anything to do with this, and there's also evidence that cooking starchy root vegetables was paramount to our brain development, as it supplied our brains with a constant stream of glucose.
This is Richard, who runs the channel Vegan Gains. Richard is a massively outspoken vegan who caused widespread controversy due in part to mental health issues, which caused a lot of people to dismiss him outright. Richard is not shy to threaten violence in his videos as a way of empathizing with livestock. Although he is very well embedded in vegan philosophy, his videos mostly focus on health benefits of a vegan diet.
Wow, they actually got something right. Vegan diets do in fact aid in weight loss, and vegans have the lowest risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes, whereas meat consumption is highly correlated with weight gain and obesity.
Number 2, a vegan diet may lead to an increased risk of heart disease.
Here's the problem with saying stupid bullshit like this. Your audience is made up of ignorant morons who only care about celebrities and bullshit, and if they happen to watch this video...
Number 2, a vegan diet may lead to an increased risk of heart disease.
I knew it! So since over 600,000 people are dying of heart disease per year in America alone, and I'm sure very few of those people are vegan, let's not spread harmful misinformation. A Whole Foods low-fat vegan dietary intervention is the only diet proven to reverse coronary artery disease in chronically ill patients, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn of the Cleveland Clinic has his own published research demonstrating this fact. Other world-leading experts, including the president of the American College of Cardiology, Dr. Kim A. Williams, is vegan and recommends a Whole Foods low-fat vegan diet for the prevention and reversal of heart disease.
Richard's ideology appears to be that all people should look after their bodies and focus on their own health and the health of others. Fitness is of great importance to him, and he feels that it should be important to all of us as well. In my opinion, an individual's health is the concern only of that individual. Nobody has the right to tell you that you must be fit and healthy. I personally give little value to health concerns, as I find my health to be adequate for my lifestyle choices. For this reason, I easily dismiss these arguments. However, many of us will encounter this mindset in conversations with vegans.
You know, if you're vegan, which I fucking hate when people say if you're vegan, but if you're vegan, why are you so fat? And it's like, to me, that's like asking, you know, a meat eater, like, if you eat meat, why are you skinny? It shows an obvious lack of knowledge on your part, because obviously just eating meat isn't going to make you fat, like just that alone, and just being vegan isn't going to make you skinny.
When I first went vegetarian, I believed that I was able to think more clearly, focus better. Don't really believe that so much anymore. I think it was kind of a placebo effect. And when I switched back to eating meat, didn't notice any drop off in terms of mental performance. What about the physical? Okay, this is a little harder to talk about from personal experience, because I'm in the best shape of my life right now since I went back to eating meat, but that corresponds as well with a much better approach to exercise. So that's not necessarily correlated with diet in my case. But here's what I'm thinking about diet. You meet lots of vegans who are very healthy, and you meet lots of vegans who are very unhealthy. So you could call yourself vegan while living on a diet of dark chocolate, noodles, and Diet Coke. You're not going to be healthy, okay? You find vegan bodybuilders, you find vegan triathletes, you find people who've been vegan for decades, living strong into old age. What I tend to think is that there's no one diet right for everybody. Okay, that some people can thrive on a vegan diet and other people not so much. Me personally, I found my energy levels getting low several months ago, so I said, you know what, I'm going to experiment going back eating meat again. And now I feel much better, but again, maybe because of the exercise. So it's complicated, but my advice would be experiment, see for yourself. There's probably not one diet out there that's going to be perfect for everybody, all right? Everyone is different.
That became super hard for me because in the past few months, as all of you guys who have watched my videos know, you've known that I've been, you know, kind of figuring out my digestive issues and realized that eating grains and beans really does not work for my body. And when I stopped eating them, you know, my digestive issues basically that I've been dealing with for like my whole life, you know, basically went away. I had rashes under my eyes, those went away. And so for me, eating beans or eating legumes and grains just really clearly is not an option. I feel so much better without them. But it makes being vegan really difficult, especially for someone who is active and is an athlete and is weight training. And so I tried, you know, eating mussels, as you guys saw, which I didn't really enjoy. That didn't really work out. And in the back of my mind, just for the past month or 2 months, I have felt myself really drawn to the idea of eating eggs. Like, eating eggs has sounded so good, and it's felt like something that my body needed, and I just totally didn't listen to that, push that aside, because I'm vegan and being vegan is so important to me. And so I just felt like this conflict of wanting to eat eggs and feeling like I couldn't possibly do that, and that doing that would be the worst thing in the world, and that I would be a bad person. And it just
Already we are able to see the umbrella term vegan can be broken down into 3 specific groups: political, philosophical, and dietary veganism. Political veganism incorporates social issues such as the economy and environmental concerns. Philosophical veganism is focused on the morals and ethics surrounding the treatment of animals. And dietary veganism is essentially the practical application of the other 2, avoiding eating or using any animal products. We have learned that though the majority of vegans loosely share in a group ideology which is predominantly based around the welfare of all life, there are subsets of vegans, each of whom adhere to their own standards and ideals, which might not necessarily harmonize with other subgroups. These subgroups intersect closely enough that they can stand unified against the outgroup, but are diverse enough that individual vegans can shrug off legitimate criticism of the movement as a whole without compromising their own beliefs, as these criticisms can be blamed on other vegan subgroups or in some cases just one individual vegan. In part 2, we will look more closely at the effect that adopting these ideologies can have on group members.
I can take the